re-injured, unless it's really a severe injury. If it's a scrape, even if it draws blood, your body will be prone to that on its own. But your mind doesn't do that. So you have to do things to take steps for that. So here's some steps you can take. You can understand your biological responses to negative and positive emotions. You can reduce the negative physical consequences of any long-standing hurt. And you can learn how grievances are formed and how to present them. Next slide, please. You also know that you can develop an understanding and application of forgiveness. That's what we're talking about primarily tonight. We're not talking about the whole range of emotions, but we're going to talk about forgiveness particularly. We're going to target that. You can take control of your life physically, mentally, and spiritually. You can improve the quality of your life, and you can restore intimacy with others and with God. This particular slide talks about the fact that more and more of the medical science world, of which I was a part, I did biomedical research for 30 years at Eli Lilly and Company. I don't know if you ever heard of the pharmaceutical Prozac. My lab partner discovered Prozac in 1972. It took 15 years from that point to get it to the market. It was marketed in Europe first, and it made the market in the United States in 1988. And it was a revolutionary thing. But in any case, the New England Journal of Medicine reports that mismanaged anger is perhaps the principal factor in predicting heart disease. Mismanaged anger. Another thing, American Heart Association states that people who can't control their tempers and who tend to explode in anger double their risk of a heart attack. Next slide. This is a book that was written in the 90s. At the time it was written, the kind of research that we're going to talk to you about today was almost unknown. It's the same kind of research that was done by Dr. Dean Ornish when he found out that through diet and lifestyle alone, you can reverse many of the lifestyle diseases that are endemic here in the United States, such as heart disease, high blood pressure, and even diabetes. You can reverse those with lifestyle. Well, at the time this book was written, they were on the frontiers of understanding the nexus between forgiveness and illness. And now that relationship is beyond serious dispute. This book was written in 1993. This particular psychiatrist and his wife wrote a book called Anger Kills. Next slide, please. You've heard this expression, I'll get even with you even if it kills me. And it just might do just that. Next 3 slides, please. There you go. Angry people die younger from all causes. They drive away life-extending social support. They fill their bloodstreams with stress hormones next. And they're more likely to engage in risky behavior because that anger mechanism, whatever it may be, disengages reason. Therefore, they do a lot of things they wouldn't ordinarily do. Bottom line, anger kills, forgiveness reduces anger. Next slide. Tonight we're going to talk about the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. As I said, I did biomedical research for 30 years. And in that realm, they only dealt with body. This was between 1970 and the year 2000. In that time period, what I discovered was that most of the scientists I worked with, they were not the crazy guys you may see in the movies. They were not people who were not nice people. They were not necessarily money growers. I've seen all kind of mythology about how drug companies are trying to make people sick and all that. Here's what I know from what I saw face to face in the realm. Most of the scientists I work with, though they may have been secular in their mindset, their desire, what drove them was not money. What drove them was to be the first to discover whatever it was that they were looking for. Now let's talk about one of these people. His name was David Wong. He was the one whose technician was the first one to see the effects of Prozac in animals. Prozac is fluoxetine hydrochloride. In any case, he was the first one to see that. David Wong's family had a history of depression. And so when he was a very young boy, he said, whatever I can do in my life, I want to find something that deals with that. He spent the rest of his life doing that. And in 1993, he won the Discoverers Award for the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association. He and two other people that I knew personally. I knew all three of them personally. But their emphasis was strictly on the body. How drugs and your body interact. Only after that, this is in the middle 90s, that we discover that your mind and spirit are more important than what's going on in your body. Because the interaction among your mind and spirit and body is what determines wellness. Next slide, please. Mind-body connection. The mind's perception is the body's reality. Next. Our perceptions become our body's reality. When you dream you're being chased, your heart rate goes up just like it was if you were actually being chased. All the same stress hormones put in your body, all that whole thing happens if you're dreaming. Next slide, please. Now, many people have a certain outlook on life, and it can be depicted by this particular drawing. Their outlook is sour. Their outlook is negative. Their outlook is, hey, I got a chip on my shoulder, you knock it off. Next slide, please. Other people who have the same circumstances or nearly the same set of circumstances, that's their paradigm. It's the same picture. It's the exact same picture. It's just inverted. Next slide, please. The Bible says this, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine. That's Proverbs 17:22. The next phrase in that particular text says this, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. While I was at Eli Lilly, we were looking for something that was good for osteoporosis. One of the people I had worked closely with, was working to find something that was good for osteoporosis. What we discovered, what the scientific world discovered was that people, and Eli Lilly, who was the first to put out an antidepressant, should have known. And people who are depressed are more likely to develop osteoporosis. So what Solomon wrote 3,000 years ago has now been medically verified. A merry heart doeth good like medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. That's medically true.
So why do you think that they develop osteoporosis?
Well, the mechanism for that is not fully known. But here's what. Remember we talked about stress hormones being released into your body? Those things are only designed for you to deal with, like, in its emergency situation. We'll talk about that in just a second. Let's go to the next slide. We are wired to respond. We have, in our spinal column, nerves that go up and down there, and it's called the autonomic nervous system. It's got two parts, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is designed to kick in when you are under an emergency situation. As for instance, I live out in the country, up in the hills of Tennessee. We don't see very many of them, but we know they're around us. That is poisonous reptiles all around us, but we have cleared up space. We have domestic animals, they don't usually come around. But an incident happened about 5 years ago, in September 2009. A copperhead snake came up onto our little carpet right outside of our back door. We have domestic animals, and they're loose. Let them run loose. Our little cat, now 14 years old, that little cat was going to confront that copperhead. That would not have been a winning situation. So guess what? All these things that you see there, all that happened to me. Heart rate went up, adrenaline pumping, all this going on. Racing thoughts, because I don't want my cat to die, and I certainly don't want any copperheads running around my back door. Okay? I killed a copperhead. And then everything kind of fell there. Next slide, please. How do you activate the sympathetic? You put yourself in a stressful situation, such as I just described. You can even think of a hurtful experience involving someone to whom you have a grudge, and the same system gets activated. Next slide, please. On the other hand, the parasympathetic part of your autonomic nervous system is designed to kick in when you are relaxed, when you're at peace, when you're in spiritual harmony with God and with others. Here's what happens. Go back. The heart rate goes down, blood pressure goes down. Your ability to digest food goes up, cholesterol production goes down or ceases, adrenaline stops. Those thyroid hormones and cortisol and all those stop. But your ability to resist disease in your immune system goes up. Racing thoughts, cool down. Next slide.
Do you think that's why a lot of people get cancer after
Absolutely.
they have a divorce? Right
Absolutely.
after a divorce, the cancer rate just skyrockets.
Absolutely. Not only that, people who live alone, people who, for whatever reason, are confrontational, unnecessarily confrontational, are more prone to this. Okay? Now, how do you activate the parasympathetic nervous system? You take a nap, exercise, take a walk, laugh, stop here. Back in the 1970s, I believe it was, the former editor of the Saturday Review, I think it was, his name was Norman Cousins. You may have heard of him. He had cancer. And what he did not know he was going to do anything positive in this. But he said, you know what? If I'm going to die, I'm going to die happy. And so what he did, he would watch all kinds of humorous movies and TV shows and whatever. And what happened to him, unexpectedly, was that his cancer went away. He laughed his way out of cancer. This is a true story. Deep breathing and stillness. Excuse me, I need to go back.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. Deep breathing and stillness. Nuzzle the spouse. You can figure out what nuzzle means, but whatever it is, get close, touch. Okay? It is now known that the average human being, not once, needs 30 touches a day. Appropriate touches a day. From family, church people, children, people in your immediate circle. You need to be touched 30 times. Okay? There you go. See, wait. You know what just happened? Just what happens. See, smiles. We were in a seminar here in Huntsville in February. The Institute for Brain Research did this. You know what they said? They said that when you smile, even if you don't mean it, if you just make yourself smile, if you fake it, people around you will smile. If I smile at you.
Smile.
It's almost the way things happen when you yawn. It becomes contagious. Then forgiveness also activates this. Now there's a list of 7 things on there. Which one is the one you got to pay for? I put it in italics to kind of boost you there. Medication. As I said, I did my biomedical research for 30 years. My lab partner discovered Prozac. And Lily was making a lot of money working. Lily was making a lot of money on medications that dealt primarily with things that activate your sympathetic nervous system. Next slide. Body wired to respond. Rehearsing hurt memories increases blood pressure, heart rate, skin conductance, and brow muscle tension. In other words, headaches. Imagining forgiveness reverses all these. Next slide. This is a quote from Ministry of Healing. This is probably my favorite book other than the Bible, Ministry of Healing. If you don't have it, get it. I can't imagine anything would do you more good than reading and immersing yourself in Ministry of Healing. Anyway, 241. Relationship that exists between the mind and body is very intimate. When one is affected, the other sympathizes. The condition of the mind affects the health to a far greater degree than many realize. Next slide. Sickness of the mind prevails everywhere. 9/10 of diseases which men suffer from have their foundation here. Next slide. This is recent. One major health maintenance organization discovered that 80%, not 10%, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% of all doctor visits have no organic etiology. That's doctor speak for me. They don't know why. They don't know why you're here. Okay? You're here. They call it presenting. You present, and they don't know why you present. They don't know. In other words, probably something going on with you that they can't measure. Next slide. We're moving into a different segment here, understanding forgiveness, because this is what we're going to focus on for the next 15 to 20 minutes. Next slide. I'm sure this will be news to about everybody in here, but everybody, and I mean just about everybody, is hurting at some level. We all make mistakes and we all need forgiveness. My wife and I have been doing lay counseling since 1986. We did some counseling this past Sunday at Mount Calvary among some of the members of Mount Calvary Church, including one of the elders. Here's what I know. Everybody is hurting. Almost everybody. If you sit and listen to them long enough, most people that you meet in church or any other setting operate at a surface level. They're not going to tell you what's going on. And in church, it's worse. It's actually worse in church. You'll see people, you say, hi, hope you're having a wonderful day. And people will say, well, yes, praise the Lord, and all that. You sit down and talk to them. You find out they're dealing with a whole lot. It may be interpersonal stress. It may be sickness. It may be family member that's gone awry, whatever. Job stress. Everybody's hurting at some level. Next slide.
It's like that guy that committed suicide just recently. Mm-hmm. He was supposed to be the funniest man on earth. Mm-hmm.
Good point. Robin Williams, he was the star of the 70s sitcom called Mork and Mindy. That's how he got his start in the network television. He was supposed to have a very facile mind, lightning fast, make up all kinds of jokes on the spot, create characters on the spot. They called him, this was in the headline yesterday on USA Today, comic genius. Comic genius. Now, his ability to make other people laugh did not benefit him. He was undergoing severe depression. Why is that? Because he didn't know how to handle life's stresses. Were his stresses worse than ours? Who knows? Everybody's got a different story. But there are ways to manage that will not have you hanging at the end of your rope, literally, as he was. Next slide. A recent Gallup poll, and they do these things scientifically. They take a scientific sample, man on the street type sample, and they ask this question: if you were in a situation where there was harm done, and you did the harm, would you ask forgiveness? 94% of the people said yes. On the other hand, they asked the same question the other way around. If something was done to you, would you give it? Would you give forgiveness? Only 55% give something done to them. Now, in that 39% difference between 94 and 55, in that 39%, there's a whole bunch of sickness, disease, medications in that 39% difference. Next slide, please. This is a saying that was coined by the 17th century philosopher Alexander Pope. You may be familiar with another one of his sayings. He said this: "Drink a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Drink deeply or drink not from the pure spring." That was his expression. He's from the 1600s. To err is human, to forgive divine. Sounds reasonable, except for one thing. We all need to forgive. And the plain fact is, forgiveness is a practical way of dealing with life's disappointments. Next slide, please. Forgiveness is a learning skill like learning a language. I teach and tutor in the public schools, and I've been doing this now for over 8 years. I did a lot of other private tutoring and whatnot before that. This is something I learned over the time. I'm a college graduate. Something I also learned. In multilingual societies, the babies grow up speaking whatever language it is that's spoken in their house. In other words, my wife and I speak, nominally speaking, English. We may not speak the King's English, but we speak English. We did not have to sit our children down and instruct them about participles and verb forms and all of that. They learn to speak it. Now, they may not be able to write, but they learn to speak by being in a household where the language was spoken. What's my point? My point is this. Forgiveness is a learned skill, and it also involves language. If you're in a community where forgiveness is the language spoken, and if you're a Christian, that should be part of the lingo, then you should be learning forgiveness just as a baby who's growing up in a Hispanic household learns Spanish. You should learn it. You ought to learn it because that's the learning process, and it bypasses any of the formal classroom stuff that I would have to do. Some years back, 39 years, I took German. I could, at a nominal level, I could write German, but I couldn't think German, so I never really learned the language. But I learned a few things about German because it's something I was interested in. I knew somebody that was very close to somebody who had a German background, and I was trying to understand that person, so I took German for 2 semesters, 1975. But if I had grown up in a German household, I would know it. Next slide. Forgiveness. These are 6 things that forgiveness is not. Run all 6. Go one right there. Stop there. Forgiveness is not forgetting. You've heard the expression, forgive or forget. Not true. Not possible. Your brain is more sophisticated than any computer anywhere. Every experience you have ever had, down to earliest childhood, is stored in your memory. The only difference between you and a computer is the ability to access it quickly. Next, it's not denying. You need to face, I need to face the pain of whatever injustice has been done. It doesn't mean I have to carry a chip on my shoulder, but I need to face it. It's not condoning it. I don't have to excuse the bad things that have been done to me. And there have been some. I don't have to allow you to do it again. Neither do I have to say, well, you know what? You did that, no consequences. My wife and I had 2 children. And one of the things we had to teach them was this: I will forgive you for anything. Anything. But that will not keep the consequences from coming. There will be consequences. Forgiveness is not synonymous with you got away with it. No, you did not get away with it. I'm not going to hold it against you, but you need to know consequences are coming. And our God and our Creator is the same way. If I do something wrong, if I rob a bank, and in the process I am mortally wounded, I can ask for God's forgiveness and get it. But I'm still going to die because I got into something I shouldn't have been in. Next slide. Forgiveness is a process of reframing one's anger, that is, looking at it a different way. One's anger and resentment from the past with the goal of recovering one's contentment in the present, revitalizing one's purpose in the future. A mouthful, we'll unpack that as we go. Next slide. Interpersonal forgiveness seeks 3 things. Restitution. If you stole it, give it back. By the way, in 1998, when we were still living in Indianapolis, we were living on Riley Avenue in Indianapolis, relatively safe neighborhood at the time. But our children had bicycles, and they would leave them out on the porch or whatever else. In the space of about 6 months, maybe 9 months, I don't remember the exact time span now, our children's bikes, between my daughter and son, were stolen 3 times. First time, we caught the guy within about 2 weeks. And the police actually said, you usually don't get a bike back when it's stolen. Matter of fact, sometimes the police come and they almost look at you like, why are you even calling? You're not going to get your bike back. We get the bike back 3 times straight. So, some progress was in play. Here's the point. The young man who stole the bike the first time, I said to him, you know what? We got this bike back, but you need to kind of work something out here because you put some paint or something on it to try to disguise it. Now, I forgave him. In fact, not only did I forgive him, I have been a member of the Big Brothers for 17 years, between 1977 and 1994. And I can see this boy's circumstance was such that I can see why he did it. I can excuse him. I can see why he was coming. He was a latchkey kid. Mother worked 2 jobs. He come home from school, nothing to do, hanging around. That sort of thing happens. But he still had to face the consequences. Reconciliation. Reconciliation requires 2 people or more. You cannot reconcile a group situation or a situation where there's in a relationship with another person by yourself. You can't do that. You can forgive them, but unless they participate, you cannot reconcile. Thirdly, it seeks changed behavior. In other words, the classic example is this. Let's just say that a husband or wife, either of the spouses, commits adultery. Forgiveness is required by the Lord God of heaven. That's required. But if there's going to be reconciliation, that behavior has to stop. That behavior has to stop. Now, as I said, we've done counseling for 28 years. This situation was presented to us not long ago, and in this situation, the husband, and this typically husbands, is about 6 to 4 husbands, 3 to 2 husbands versus wives who do this, who commit adultery. Husband was caught the first time, and he was very repentant, with tears. Reminds me of the story of Esau, that with tears. Second time, not so much. And then the third time, he shrugged it off. His wife told us the story. She was still very, very, very hurt by it. They forced it. She forced it. You would not change it. Next slide, please. It takes one person to forgive. That is, I can do this by myself. You hurt me, I can forgive you. But if we are going to have an ongoing relationship, you and I need to work that out together. My expression is this. Forgiveness is unilateral or unconditional, but reconciliation is bilateral. It takes 2 of us to do that one. Next slide, please. Forgiveness can heal, must heal our pain before it can heal our pain. Next slide. Reconciliation is the restoration of trust in a relationship in which trust has been violated. It could be adultery, it could be somebody committing theft or some sort of thing, embezzlement, whatever. Next slide.
Can I say something about this real quick?
Sure.
Trust is so vitally important.
Mm-hmm.
I teach swim lessons to children.
Yeah.
Parents will come to me and they'll say, Johnny, trust you. He'll do it for you. But he doesn't. They don't trust the parents because they know their swimming skills and stuff. And trust makes a difference. That's why I would tell the parents, and I mean, we charge them a high price to teach their children how to swim.
Mm-hmm.
But it's worth it because we can, but anyway. But I tell the parent, I said the first time, if the child is real scared, and sometimes they are scared because someone has just thrown them in the water or something, and they have no trust, I will start them out on the steps and we will just play. Sometimes we have to play the whole time, but once they get your trust and they trust you, they'll do it. But I had one little boy one time, I mean, I don't know what happened to him, but this little boy never trusted anybody. Evidently, his trust was really vital because there was, I mean, he wanted to do it, but his body would actually shake when he would try to do it. And something happened to him. I've never seen anything like it.
I understand it. Next slide. Forgiveness is a path to healing. Many years ago, 38 years ago, a friend and I walked up Clayman's Dome in the Smokies. It was only 4 miles. It took 4 hours to do it because it was back and forth, dips up and down. Forgiveness is like that. Along the journey there are advances, retreats, and sometimes diversions in which you measure your progress by degrees. Sometimes it's a little, sometimes a little bit more, and then sometimes nothing. In other words, sometimes You don't feel any forgiveness at all. This same person whose husband had committed adultery on her asked her, she said, you know what, I thought I'd forgiven, but there are times when I feel like I haven't. And she was feeling somewhat guilty about that. Plain fact is, everybody goes through that. That's normal. It's normal. Because the pain remains. Barriers to forgiveness. You think it's going to be done to you again? You don't want to appear weak. This is men mainly. Fear there will be no justice or fairness, and the loss of benefits derived from being a victim. In other words, people feeling sorry for you and you being able to manipulate that. But the biggest one of all is not on this slide. The biggest barrier to forgiveness is the same thing that caused our first parents to fall. Pride. I'm too proud to forgive you. How dare you do that? That's the biggest barrier. Next slide. Forgiveness is difficult because we want to believe that life's fair, let the other person off the hook. Seems unfair. Next slide. But life is not fair. There was a movie here many years ago. My son probably watched it, and the younger generation, they've all seen this. I happened to see it when I was teaching in the public schools. The teacher said, instead of you teaching my class today, show them a movie. They showed the movie. And in the movie, one of the characters who's supposed to be mentoring this superhero, Batman, he's supposed to be mentoring him. So he's become a tough guy. Guys walked up this very steep slope in the blinding blizzard, ice cold. His walks up, knocks on the door, and the mentor opens the door. The mentor is nice and warm. There's a little fire crackling in the background, and the guy who's begun to become Batman walks in the door, and the mentor says to him, "Are you ready to begin?" And the character says, "I'm exhausted. I can hardly stand." And the mentor kicks him in the stomach. And he says this. He says, "Death does not wait for you to be ready. Death is not considerate or fair." And that's the way life is. Things are not fair. Life is unfair. Next slide. But we want it to be fair. And so we create rules to try to make it fair, but it's not going to happen. We want others to be responsible, accountable. We want justice for others, but for ourselves, we want mercy. That's how it goes. Next slide. So then what happens is this: because of the fallenness of the human condition, instead of us desiring reasonableness, fairness, accountability, we want vengeance. We want you to hurt for what you did. So what's God's solution to that? It's forgiveness. But next slide. What he then does say is this. He says, vengeance is mine. I own that one because I'm the only one who can take vengeance and still redeem the situation. You can't do that. Next slide. Vengeance hurts you more than the other person. Forgiveness helps you more than the other person. Next slide. So here's how God balances this thing out. He puts forgiveness on both sides of the scale. On the side of understanding how people are, and on the side of reasonableness and justice. People make choices. People make mistakes. Forgiveness balances it out. Next slide, please. Now, fast forgiveness. That is to say, somebody may say to you, they're in a hurtful situation. Maybe it's the spouse that got cheated on. You're in that situation. Oh, I forgive. Maybe not so fast. If you really haven't dealt with it on an emotional level, then your forgiveness is probably more aptly described as denial. Next slide. Forgiveness is a choice. You choose to forgive when you may not feel like forgiving. Next kick up the next toe. Stop there. Stay in control and be a victor, not a victim. Don't give up your choice. It's not what happens to you, it's what happens in you. And you choose your response. Next slide. Forgiveness is taking responsibility for my life. Responsibility is my ability to choose my response. You cannot choose your circumstance. I did not choose the fact I was born into an African American mother and father. I had no choice in that. Couldn't even choose my name. I could not choose my genetic makeup. None of that. And many of the things and circumstances in my life I had no choice over. I really did. They were just part of my makeup. I had bad eyes. Didn't choose that. One leg long enough. Didn't choose that. Things happen. But I can choose how I respond to life. That's all in my belly. This is Joseph. Everybody, almost everybody, even non-Christian, know this story. Story of forgiveness. But there's some interpersonal dynamics that go with the story. Next slide. Reuben was the ringleader of the guys that threw Joseph in the pit. You see, Joseph was Jacob's pet. He loved him and showed favoritism, obvious favoritism. That's Jacob's mistake. He came from a dysfunctional situation where his mother favored him. And then, guess what? He did the same thing with Joseph. He favored him, and he did it obviously. Reuben was the firstborn of Leah. Leah was Jacob's real first wife. Probably should have been his only wife. But anyway, firstborn. And Reuben resented the treatment that Joseph got. You can capitalize it by saying this. He rejected the son of the woman for whom his father had rejected his mother. In other words, you know the story. There was Leah and Rachel. Leah was rejected for Rachel. Reuben knew that. And he had it in for Joseph. Next slide. But Joseph's secret is in his response. He understood Romans 8:28, which says, all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. It doesn't mean everything is good, but God can make it good if you're patient. Joseph knew that. And he also knew what his destiny was. That dream that he had was real. It was really going to happen. People were going to bow down to him. And he let that guide his responses. So no matter what happened, he got lied on, thrown in jail because the husband, Potiphar, who really knew his wife was lying, but he had to save face. So he throws Joseph in jail to save face. Joseph did not hold that against him. In jail, the baker and butler were in there with him. Butler says, you know what, when I get out of this situation, I'm going to remember you. Butler forgot. Joseph didn't hold that against him either. Brothers come up in a situation now where there's a family. Joseph says, you know what? I know you guys had an enemy. I knew that. But God meant it for good. Because now I'm in a position I can save your life. And he did that. And in saving the life of his brethren, those were the children of Israel when it was just 12. He saved an entire nation, out of which came the Savior of the world, Jesus, through the line of Judah. Next slide. We're going to go through these very, very quickly. Go to the next one. Stop there. Forgiveness begins when you accept that life is not fair. Forgiveness begins when you stop blaming others for what's going on in your life. Forgiveness begins when you understand that you can't change the person who hurt you. You can only change yourself. Forgiveness begins when you acknowledge the anger or hurt that the unpleasant or harmful event is causing you and reframe your story of hurt, your grievance story, the poor me story that you have going on in your mind after you get hurt. Reframe it means look at it in a different way. Look at it from the larger picture. That's what Joseph did. He said, I knew what you were doing. I knew what you were doing. I knew why you did it. But I had a dream. I had a vision. And because of that, my vision took in the whole situation. And so, yeah. You meant it for evil. God meant it for good. Next slide. There's 5 things on that one too. Stop. Forgiveness begins when you recognize that only you can make the choice to forgive. When you see the offender in a different light by humbly choosing to empathize with his or her situation. When the boy stole my son's bike. I've been there. I didn't absolve him, but I've been there. In the 1950s, when my mother, who was working as a hotel maid in Pittsburgh, she would come home 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, exhausted. Found something to do. I've been there. My father was 66 miles away. We were in Pittsburgh. He was in Youngstown. He was nowhere to be found. They had split. What am I going to do? I understood what the situation was. Forgiveness begins when you choose to move from discontent to contentment. And that's a choice. In other words, I don't have to let the circumstances determine how I'm going to feel about any particular situation in life. I have met people. I haven't necessarily mastered this, by the way. Okay, I'm just giving you the information. I haven't mastered this. I'm on the way, but I haven't mastered this. I know people who have mastered this. Doesn't matter what happened to them. And they haven't become stoics. They haven't become robots or automatons, but they know. Whatever happens, God's got it. I'm okay. I know people who got that down. And they're, generally speaking, these people live a long time. One of those persons was my aunt. She passed away last March of 2013. All around her was hurt and despair. She died at 92. She was diagnosed with heart disease when she was in her 40s or 50s. She lost her husband to heart disease. She lost her son to a coronary embolism. She lost all her children. She outlived all her children. And she was one of the calmest persons you ever met. Because she had that down. Forgiveness begins when you understand that forgiveness will take time and you cannot rush it. And when you take responsibility for your life and your future. Next slide, please. 7 things to teach children about children. We're going to go right through this. Children are watching you to see how you behave. They're watching you to see do you have conditions for your forgiveness. And it's not about who wins, who loses. Big me, little you. And they watch and they see that it does take time. And you teach them to look at a situation in a different way. You talk to them about that. Some things they see, but some things you have to sit down and coach them. And you have to teach them to do what I just told you about the boy that stole my son's bike. To look at them in a different light. Doesn't absolve them, but take another look at it. And you have to teach them that unforgiveness, holding grudges, is garbage. It's like taking a banana, peeling the banana, and throwing away the banana and eating the peel. It's garbage. Or peeling an onion and eating the rind around the onion. It's garbage. You don't want to eat it. Next slide. It involves the whole person. That is how you think, your reasoning processes. Next slide. Forgiveness involves letting the feeling inform you, but not overwhelm you. Feeling the feeling, owning it, but not drowning in it. Next slide, please. It involves the whole person, the behavioral aspect. This is Joseph here. Aligning your actions with the goal rather than reacting to whatever situation that comes up. That's why Joseph could be in a worse situation, thrown in jail unjustly, and the next thing you know, within weeks, he's running to jail. And as soon as Pharaoh confronts the situation with the famine, Butler says, you know, I know this guy, and he interprets dreams and stuff. Pharaoh said, bring him in here. Within an hour, Joseph is running the country. The Bible says Pharaoh didn't even know what he was doing except what was put in front of him. Joseph had it all. And forgiveness involves the whole person. You've heard this expression, let go and let God. It's a cliche in the black community. Let go and let God. But here's what it means. It means that whatever happens, I don't have to carry it around like a bowling ball on my back. It means I acknowledge it, I deal with it. If there was something that involves an injury to me, I deal with it forthrightly and lovingly. But at the end of the day, let it go. Next slide. 2 rules. I do not forgive because I'm supposed to, because the preacher told me, or whatever. Or I read a book. I forgive because I'm ready to be healed. And then finally, hurts need to be healed and not recycled. In other words, you hit me, I hit you back. Hit me, I hit you back. We need to stop that. No future in that. Because then, if I get in God's territory, if I get into vengeance mode, God said, now I deal with you. Now the person hurt you, but then now you take the vengeance. Now I got to deal with you and them. Next slide. Bible says this. This is Galatians 6:1. If anybody be overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual. In other words, if you think you're a spiritual person, you think that you're the sort of person that God would commend for your spirituality, here's how that would look. Restore the person that did whatever it was to you. In my case, since I was in the Big Brothers, and since I have that gift for encouragement, I went to the boy's house. And I took it. Doesn't have to necessarily involve that, but it involves intentionally restoring the relationship. As best I can. I have that mindset. And if you will cooperate with me, if you hurt me, if you'll cooperate with me, we will get it done. It will take time, but we will restore our confidence in each other. Next slide. This is another great quote from Ministry of Healing. I read this every day because I have to. See, I haven't mastered what my auntie, Mama Bashley, who died at 92, I haven't mastered this yet. She mastered this. We cannot afford to let our spirits take over any real or supposed wrong done to ourselves. Self is the enemy we most need to fear. No form of vice has a more baleful effect upon the character than this human passion not under the control of the Holy Spirit. No other victory we can gain will be so precious as the victory gained over self. Next slide. This is what Moses discovered. Moses had some interesting experiences too, but I don't have time to go through. But here's what it said. The Lord is slow to anger, forgiving iniquity and transgression, by no means clearing the guilty. In other words, at the end of all of this, there will be separation of sheep and goats. Some people are going to have an eternal destiny of bliss and happiness, and some are going to go to eternal damnation. He's not going to clear the guilty. You hold on to your guilt, you own it, and you deal with it. Next slide. Ellen White chimes in. She echoes this by saying, the spirit of forgiveness toward our fellow man does not lessen the claim of just obligation. In other words, if they are somebody who did something to you, God will hold them to that. Even if you can't, God will.
That's why we need to say, God, forgive them. Mm-hmm. Because if we don't, it will come back on us. Exactly. And we really don't want to hurt.
Exactly. Now, Paul said this one thing, and every time that I speak, especially to a church group, it all comes down to this. It's how we relate to each other. It's about Christ and Him crucified. Don't remember anything else I said. Remember that, because that's the reason you're here. You said, well, no, I'm not a Christian, I don't believe that. Fine. Everybody on the face of the earth draws their next breath because of Calvary. The mercy that was shown then is the only reason you and I are alive today. Next. Good, get two more times. Good. Forgiveness is His gift to us. Now, you've heard this expression, given shall be given to you, pressed down and shaken together shall be given to your bosom. That's Luke 6:38. But the context of Luke 6:38 is forgiveness. It's not money. I heard the prosperity preacher say, well, given shall be given, you just give to my ministry. Nothing to do with money. Nothing. Now, the principle will hold if you're a person who is a generous person. That principle will hold if it's money or whatever else. It will hold. But the primary context of that passage is forgiveness. You give it, you get it back. Next slide. All the way down. Stop. Now this is how we apply Numbers 14:18. Slow down. We live too fast here in the United States. Everybody's scurrying to and fro. Flying. Whatever. Take time to forgive. It does take time. Thoroughly forgive. In other words, don't forgive it and take it back. In other words, if you forgave the person, don't constantly be retelling the story. Okay? You may have episodes in your mind where you're in the dark of night. You may be thinking about whatever it was done to you. And you may have to say, God, help me forgive again. But don't keep telling the story to other people. Clear it up. Make sure God is in control of the process. Work with Him to work it out. And finally, and completely get on with your life. Last slide. Boil it down to this. Forgive and live. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was excellent. Do you want to have prayer with us before we go?
Absolutely, absolutely. After prayer, we'll talk a little about these other things. Let's bow our heads. Our Father in heaven, you have given us a marvelous gift. The gift of forgiveness, which then opens the door to every other gift that you give us. You're the good giver of every good and perfect gift. And it comes down from you, the Father of lights, in whom there is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. And because of that, we can count on you to forgive us when we come asking. You said in your word that if we confess our sins, you're faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all, not some, all unrighteousness. And to this, we are inevitably in your debt. There's nothing we can do to pay you back for that. But at the same time, you told us in your word that since you forgave us, we are to forgive others. Because the debt we owe you is unimaginable. And the debt that others owe us is a pittance in comparison. So, Father, please facilitate this in us. And even as we go from this meeting tonight, may we go forth renewed in our commitment to forgive as we have been forgiven. And we'll do this in the name and power of your Son, Jesus Christ. And thank you. Amen.